A single stone tool can rewrite the entire story of human migration. The past is not a settled record, but a living mystery, constantly reshaped by the ground beneath us. This is a journey through 20 archaeological discoveries that forced us to tear up the textbooks and start again. You will gain a completely new understanding of the human journey, from our deepest origins to the rise of empires. How did a temple predate agriculture, and what silent army guards an emperor's quest for eternity? These are not just old objects, they are conversations with our ancestors, challenging everything we thought we knew about ambition, belief, and survival. What part of our shared history feels most mysterious to you? The ground beneath those shepherds held a secret that would unravel our oldest story. For decades, the accepted narrative was a simple equation: necessity drove invention. Humans learned to farm, which created surplus food, which allowed people to settle in one place, and only then did they have the time and resources to build monuments and develop complex spiritual beliefs. It was a logical, almost economic view of our origins. Then, in the 1990s, began to excavate a place called. What he found were not the foundations of a village, but something far more profound. Carved from the living bedrock were immense stone circles, each anchored by colossal T-shaped pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons. These pillars were not crude blocks, they were artworks, etched with a menagerie of foxes, cranes, scorpions, and boars in breathtaking detail. The material itself was a statement. This was limestone that had to be shaped and transported without the wheel, without domesticated animals, by people who were, according to our old textbooks, simple hunter-gatherers. The dating was the true shock. This complex was constructed around 11,500 years ago. That is 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and a staggering 5,000 years before the first cities of Mesopotamia. At this point in time, there was no evidence of agriculture in the region. No fields of wheat, no pens for goats. The builders were not farmers who settled down to worship. They were gatherers and hunters who came together from across a wide region to create a sanctuary. This turns the entire sequence of civilization on its head. What if the primal spark was not a full stomach, but a yearning for meaning? The monumental effort required coordination, a shared vision, and a social hierarchy to organize the labor. It suggests that the need to gather for ritual, to express a shared cosmology through art and architecture, provided the social glue that made large, cooperative societies possible. This temple may have been the very reason people began to experiment with cultivating the wild grasses growing on the hills around it, to feed the congregations drawn to this sacred place. Does not just push back the date of the first temple, it challenges us to see belief not as a product of society, but as its very foundation. If our drive to build the divine came first, what does that say about what truly makes us human? This question leads us from a hilltop in Turkey to a cave in South Africa, where an even older discovery redefines the artist. The artistic impulse at A was profound, but the messages carved into those pillars remained silent. For a beautiful script with no key. For an even more complete civilization, that silence was absolute. For over 1,000 years, the voice of ancient Egypt was utterly lost. Its magnificent monuments stood as majestic but mute sentinels, covered in intricate hieroglyphs that no living person could understand. The history of the pharaohs, their religious beliefs, their daily lives, were trapped behind an indecipherable code. This was a collective amnesia on a scale. Then, in 1799, amid the turmoil of Napoleon's campaign in Egypt, a French soldier made a routine but world-altering discovery. He unearthed a dark, irregular slab of granodiorite, roughly the size of a tablet, near a town called. This stone was no ordinary artifact. It was inscribed with a single decree from the year 196 before Common Era, but it was written 3 times in 3 different scripts. At the top were the elegant pictorial hieroglyphs, the sacred script of the priests and monuments. In the middle was Demotic, the everyday cursive script used by most Egyptians, and at the bottom was Ancient Greek, the language of the ruling Ptolemaic dynasty, which scholars could still read. This was the stone, and it presented a tantalizing promise, a linguistic parallel that could finally bridge the gap across the centuries. The race to decipher it became one of history's great intellectual puzzles. Scholars across Europe pored over copies, but the final breakthrough came from a French linguist named Jean. He realized hieroglyphs were not just representing objects, but a complex system that could also represent sounds, much like an alphabet. By comparing the known Greek names like Ptolemy and Cleopatra with their encircled hieroglyphic counterparts, he began to crack the code. It was a moment of stunning revelation. Suddenly, the silent stones began to speak. The stone did not just translate words, it resurrected an entire civilization from silence. We could finally read the pharaohs, own accounts of their victories, understand the mystical spells within the Book of the Dead meant to guide souls to the afterlife, and grasp the intricate details of Egyptian law and statecraft. It transformed Egyptology from a field of speculation and wonder into a rigorous historical science. The stone reminded the world that writing is civilization's memory, and to lose the ability to read it is to forget who we once were. As we recovered one lost voice, however, another discovery in a very different field would challenge our fundamental understanding of where humanity itself came from, shaking the very foundations of our place in the natural world. The voice of ancient Egypt was finally heard again, but another library waited in perfect silence, buried not under desert sands, but within the cliffs overlooking the Dead Sea. In 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd searching for a lost goat threw a stone into a dark cave opening. Instead of the scuffle of an animal, he heard the distinct, sharp crack of breaking pottery. Climbing inside, he found not treasure in the conventional sense, but something far more precious to history: clay jars containing bundles of ancient leather and papyrus scrolls. This accidental moment unveiled the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of manuscripts that would become the greatest textual discovery of the 20th century. These were not just old documents, they were a time capsule of faith and scholarship, dating from the 3rd century before Common Era to the 1st century Common Era. The scrolls contained fragments of every book of the Hebrew Bible except one, preserving versions over 1,000 years older than any previously known. For scholars, this was revolutionary. It showed the biblical text was not always a fixed, unchangeable monument, but had a history of fluidity and variation before it became standardized. The differences were often minor, a word here or a phrase there, but they proved the text was a living document and transmitted by human hands across generations. Alongside these biblical books were other texts, rule books for a devout community, commentaries, and apocalyptic visions. These sectarian writings illuminated a period of intense religious diversity and fervor in a world of debate and expectation during the Second Temple period. They provide the most direct window we have into the complex Jewish milieu from which both early Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism later emerged. Hidden in jars for two, the scrolls survived because of the arid, stable climate of the desert, a natural vault that preserved parchment and ink against time. They force us to not just the transmission of sacred texts, but the very nature of a society living under the shadow of the Roman Empire, a people so committed to preserving their spiritual heritage that they sealed it in caves. This act of preserving fragile wisdom in a barren landscape finds a startling parallel in a different kind of preservation, where not texts, but a human life was held in time's grip by ice. The scrolls preserved words, but the ice preserved a life. In September 1991, two hikers in the Alps spotted what they thought was a modern tragedy, a fellow mountaineer lost to the mountain. But this was no recent loss. As authorities carefully extracted the body, they realized they were looking at something unimaginable. This man, nicknamed, had died over 5,000 years ago, around 3,300 before Common Era, his body and belongings perfectly preserved in a glacial tomb. He was not a carefully prepared mummy of a pharaoh, but a natural time capsule, offering a snapshot of daily existence in the European copper age so intimate it feels almost intrusive. Through him, prehistory stopped being an abstract timeline and became a personal story. Forensic science has read his life in astonishing detail. We know his last meal was ibex meat and grains. We know he suffered from worn joints and intestinal parasites. We know the sophisticated technology he carried, including a finely made copper axe that rewrote the timeline of metallurgy in Europe, proving advanced skill far earlier than assumed. His clothing, a layered patchwork of animal skins and grass, speaks of practical adaptation to the alpine cold. Even his health practices are visible, with carbon tattoos found on areas of his body that likely ached, suggesting a form of early therapeutic treatment. But it is the story of his end that is most gripping. Analysis revealed an arrowhead lodged in his shoulder, deep cuts on his hands, and the blood of other individuals on his gear. Did not simply freeze, he was involved in a conflict, fleeing into the high mountains where he ultimately succumbed to his injury. He is not an artifact, but a person, a man with a name we will never know, caught in a moment of crisis that transcends. His genetic blueprint further connects him to us, showing ancestry traces still found in modern populations and revealing patterns of ancient migration. Forces us to confront a complete individual from the deep past, with his pains, his skills, and his struggles, making the Neolithic world viscerally real. His story ended alone on a mountainside, but another discovery would reveal an entire community whose story ended in a single, catastrophic afternoon. His personal story of conflict and flight ended in the lonely silence of the Alps, but an entire city's story ended in a single afternoon of collective terror. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79 Common Era was one of history's most infamous natural disasters, a cataclysm that entombed the vibrant Roman towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum. For archaeology, however, this profound human tragedy created a unique kind of miracle. The thick layers of volcanic ash and searing pyroclastic flows did not just destroy, they preserved, freezing these communities in a moment of daily life with a detail no other site on Earth can match. This is not a city of ruins rebuilt over centuries. It is a snapshot, a three-dimensional window directly into the heart of the Roman Empire. We walk on original stone streets grooved by chariot wheels. We peer into bakeries where carbonized loaves of bread still sit in ovens. We admire the brilliant colors of frescoes in grand villas and the intricate beauty of mosaic floors, all untouched by later generations. The archaeology here is so complete it transcends objects and touches humanity itself. In the 19th century, excavators developed a technique of pouring plaster into voids left in the hardened ash by decomposed bodies. The resulting casts are haunting and intimate, capturing the final postures of individuals in their last moments, a poignant reminder of the event's suddenness. Yet Pompeii and Herculaneum are not just about an end, they are about a living society. Preserved graffiti on walls gives us the unfiltered voice of the people, from political endorsements and love notes to simple boasts and insults. The sophisticated plumbing, the shops selling everyday goods, the taverns and theaters, all reveal the complex machinery of Roman urban life, its economic rhythms and social hierarchies. We see the stark contrast between the luxurious homes of the wealthy with their heated floors and the modest apartments of the ordinary citizens. These cities force us to confront the vibrant normality that existed just before the catastrophe, a bustling world of commerce, politics, art, and family life. They show us that civilization, for all its grandeur, rests on a fragile foundation, capable of being suspended and preserved by the very forces that can erase it. This unparalleled preservation of daily reality gives way to another kind of preservation, one that safeguarded not the rhythm of life, but the very framework of order and justice for an empire. The volcanic ash preserved a city's daily pulse, but another stone, carved 1,000 miles and nearly 2,000 years earlier, sought to preserve something far more abstract, the very idea of order itself. In 1901, archaeologists working at the ancient city of Susa made a breathtaking find, a towering black pillar of basalt stone, over 7 feet tall. This was no mere monument, it was the Code of Hammurabi. Created by the Babylonian king Hammurabi around 1754 before Common Era, its surface is covered in meticulous cuneiform script, laying out 282 laws for all to see. This was a revolutionary concept, a public declaration that justice would not be the whim of a local official, but a written standard consistent across the entire empire. The famous principle of retributive justice, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, is there, establishing a clear if severe scale of consequences. But the code's scope is astonishingly broad. It governs commercial contracts, sets wages for various professions, dictates terms for marriage and inheritance, and even outlines liability for faulty construction. If a builder's house collapses and kills the owner, the builder could face a severe penalty. This was an attempt to bring predictability to every aspect of Babylonian life, from the marketplace to the family home. The text begins and ends with a prologue and epilogue where Hammurabi declares he was chosen by the gods to bring justice to the land, to protect the weak from the strong. While the punishments seem harsh to modern eyes, and the laws certainly favored certain social classes, the core idea was transformative. Society could be governed by published rules, not just by power. This stele is a cornerstone of legal history, the first major effort to codify the complex web of human relations into a single, durable statement. It represents the moment a civilization decided to write down its conscience, attempting to replace chaos with a system, however imperfect. From this foundational code that sought to organize a known empire, we move to a discovery that revealed a magnificent empire history had completely forgotten. Hammurabi's code was meant to last forever, etched in stone for an empire's subjects to see. But an entire empire, a civilization of breathtaking scale and sophistication, was somehow erased from global memory for centuries. In 1911, a young American academic named, driven by tales of lost Inca cities, journeyed into the cloud-shrouded peaks of the Peruvian Andes. He was not alone in his search. Local farmers living in the valleys below knew of the ancient ruins on the ridge above. They called it, or Old Peak. With their guidance, pushed through dense vegetation and emerged onto a site that belief. There, strung between two dramatic mountain summits like a celestial bridge, lay a city of stone. It was not a ruin in the conventional sense of scattered blocks, but a nearly intact architectural masterpiece, a 15th century Inca estate that had never been found and thus never plundered by Spanish conquistadors. Its preservation was a historical accident of the highest order. The precision of its construction is still humbling today. Massive granite blocks, some weighing many tons, were cut and fitted together with such exactitude that not even a knife blade can slip between them, all achieved without iron tools, without the wheel, and without mortar. This was an engineering philosophy that understood the landscape not as an obstacle, but as a partner. The city cascades down the mountainside in a series of agricultural terraces that prevented erosion and created microclimates for growing crops. Its buildings, plazas, and temples align with celestial events like the solstices, turning the entire mountaintop into a giant stone calendar and observatory. The central mystery is not how it was built, but why. Was it a secluded retreat for the Inca emperor, a royal estate far from the capital? Was it a sacred sanctuary, a dwelling place for virgins dedicated to the sun god? Or was it primarily a center for astronomical study and ritual, a place to commune with the mountain spirits, or Apis, that the Inca revered? Scholars still debate its primary purpose, and it was likely all these things combined. Its true power lies in what it represents, a civilization that achieved monumental feats of social organization, agriculture, and astronomy on a parallel but completely isolated path from Europe and Asia. Utterly dismantles any outdated notion of New World primitiveness. It showcases a human ingenuity that worked in profound harmony with a demanding environment, a testament to what can be built when a society sees itself as part of nature, not its master. This citadel in the clouds stands as a silent, majestic rebuke to the idea that civilization has only one definition. From this pinnacle of isolated achievement, we must now journey into a deep, dark cave to find a discovery that proved we were never alone on the human family tree. The cloud-shrouded citadel of A was a monument to human achievement in splendid isolation. But deep within a cold Siberian cave, a discovery would shatter the very idea of human isolation, revealing that our past was a world of startling diversity. In 2008, within cave in the Altai Mountains, archaeologists found a tiny, unremarkable fragment, a piece of a finger bone so small it was almost overlooked. By sight alone, it was impossible to tell who it belonged to. But science had a new tool, and what it revealed was a seismic shock. Pioneering Svante and his team managed to extract ancient DNA from this minuscule relic. The genetic blueprint did not match modern humans, nor did it match our well-known cousins, the Neanderthals. It belonged to an entirely new branch on the human family tree, a species we now call the Denisovans. This was not just finding a new fossil, it was using a molecular key to unlock a lost chapter of prehistory. The implications were profound. For tens of thousands of years, at least 3 distinct human species, Homo, Neanderthals, and Denisovans, shared the ancient world. Our family tree was not a neat, linear progression from primitive to advanced, but a tangled, bushy network of different lineages, most of which ultimately died out. The Denisovans themselves remain mysterious. We have few physical remains, mostly teeth and bone fragments from that single cave. Yet their legacy is written in us. Genetic studies show that modern populations in Melanesia and parts of Southeast Asia carry significant traces of Denisovan DNA, a clear sign that our ancestors not only met them, but with them. This mixing was not just a historical footnote, it provided tangible survival advantages. For example, a gene variant inherited from Denisovans is common among Tibetan populations, helping them thrive in the thin air of the high Himalayas by regulating their blood's oxygen-carrying capacity. Cave itself became a unique archive, its layers showing alternating occupation by Denisovans, Neanderthals, and possibly even early modern humans, a silent stone record of prehistoric encounters. This genetic revolution teaches us that the story of human evolution is not one of a lone hero marching toward destiny, but a complex saga of diversity, mixture, and lost relatives. We are not a pure species, but a mosaic, a living tapestry woven from threads of other now-vanished peoples. As genetic science rewrote our deepest origins, another discovery would give voice to humanity's oldest surviving narrative, the first story ever written down. The Denisovans remind us our family tree was a crowded, tangled forest. But another discovery from that same fertile crescent of human innovation would give us the voice of that forest, the first story ever told. In the mid-19th century, archaeologists sifting through the ruins of Nineveh, the great capital of the Assyrian Empire, uncovered a trove of broken clay tablets in the palace library of King Ashurbanipal. The library itself was a marvel, an attempt to gather all the world's knowledge in one place. But among its thousands of administrative records and scholarly texts were 12 fragile tablets inscribed with a narrative that would resonate across. When scholars painstakingly pieced them together and translated the cuneiform script, they were reading the Epic of Gilgamesh, a literary work composed nearly 4,000 years ago, over 1,000 years before Homer wrote the Iliad. This was not a dry chronicle of kings, but a sweeping, psychologically complex poem. It follows Gilgamesh, the arrogant king of Uruk, and his wild companion as they battle monsters, defy gods, and ultimately confront the universal human fear, the reality of death. When passes away, Gilgamesh is shattered, setting him on a desperate, futile quest for immortality. The themes are timeless, the agony of loss, the bond of friendship, the struggle to find meaning in a finite life. Its literary power alone would secure its place in history, but one particular section caused a global sensation. Within the epic is the story of a man warned by a god to build a great boat to survive a world-engulfing flood. The parallels to the later biblical story of Noah were unmistakable: a divinely sent deluge, a chosen survivor, the sending out of birds to find land. For Victorian scholars and theologians, this was a profound shock. It demonstrated that this powerful flood narrative was not unique to one tradition, but a foundational myth shared across Mesopotamian cultures for centuries, adapted and retold. The epic provides an unparalleled window into the Sumerian and world view, their concepts of kingship, their turbulent relationship with capricious gods, and their understanding of the boundary between the human and the divine. Gilgamesh fails to win eternal life, but he learns to accept his mortality by focusing on his legacy, the mighty walls of Uruk he built to protect his people. In that lesson, we see the birth of literature's greatest purpose, to help us understand what it means to be human. This ancient exploration of the human spirit through narrative gives way to an even older exploration, this one not told in words, but carved into a face. The Epic of Gilgamesh gave us humanity's oldest written story, but our artistic journey began far earlier, carved not in clay, but in stone by hands working in the flickering light of an Ice Age fire. In 1908, an archaeological dig near Austria uncovered a small, palm-sized object that would become an icon of prehistory. Known as the Denisov, this figurine stands just over 4 inches tall, carved from Oolitic limestone some 25,000 years ago. To the modern eye, its form is striking, even startling, with its exaggerated emphasis on the female body, the rounded abdomen, full breasts, and carefully rendered details like braided hair. This was not a portrait in the literal sense, but a powerful abstraction. For over a century, its purpose has been a subject of intense debate. Was it a fertility charm, a symbol of abundance and survival in a harsh, glacial world? Could it represent a mother goddess, an early focus of veneration? Some scholars suggest it might even be a form of self-portrait, created from the perspective of a woman looking down at her own body. While we may never know its exact cultural meaning, its true significance is universal. The Venus is one of the earliest and most eloquent testimonies to the birth of symbolic thought. Its creator did not simply replicate what they saw, they transformed it, emphasizing specific features to convey an idea, a value, or a spiritual concept. This tiny sculpture proves that long before writing, before cities, before agriculture, Homo possessed a rich inner world capable of abstraction. It challenges the old assumption that Paleolithic art was merely decorative or a simple recording of hunts. The care taken in its creation, the selection of non-local stone, and its likely use as a carried object suggest it played a central role in the social or ritual life of its nomadic community. The Denisov is a profound whisper from the deep freeze of the last ice age, reminding us that the drive to create meaning, to shape our understanding of life and fertility into tangible form, is a fundamental thread in the human story, as ancient as we are. This intimate symbol of life and creativity stands in stark contrast to a discovery that became the ultimate symbol of a civilization's abrupt and catastrophic end. The Denisov was a silent symbol, but a room full of clay tablets held a language that refused to speak for over 3,000 years. Across the ruins of Knossos on Crete and the Mycenaean palaces on the Greek mainland, archaeologists kept finding them, small, palm-sized tablets of baked clay inscribed with a mysterious script of lines and shapes. Scholars called it Linear B, and for decades it was one of the great locked doors of the ancient world. The civilization that produced it, the brilliant but seemingly silent Mycenaeans of the Greek Bronze Age, remained frustratingly mute, known only by their grand tombs and fortress walls. The legend of the labyrinth and the Minotaur at Knossos was vibrant, but the historical reality was a cipher. Then, in 1952, an amateur linguist and architect named Michael achieved one of the 20th century's most stunning intellectual feats. Working from home, treating the puzzle like a complex architectural problem, he systematically tested hypotheses. His monumental breakthrough was this: Linear B was not a language unto itself, but an early, syllabic form of Greek. This was a revelation that rewrote history. It proved that the Mycenaeans, the people of Agamemnon and the Trojan War from Homer's epics, were not just warriors but the first Greek speakers, their civilization flourishing centuries before the city-states of classical Athens. Even more transformative, it showed that the great palace of Knossos on Crete, long thought to be the heart of a separate, peaceful Minoan kingdom, was in fact a major administrative center within the Mycenaean Greek world. The tablets themselves were not epic poetry. They were bureaucratic inventories, lists of chariot wheels, quantities of grain, offerings of oil to deities, and allocations of workers. Yet in their dry detail, they painted a vivid picture of a highly organized, centrally controlled palatial economy. We learn of a society meticulously tracking its resources, with a complex hierarchy of officials, craftspeople, and laborers. We see the names of gods that would be familiar centuries later, like Poseidon and Dionysus, already being. Decipherment did more than translate words. It connected the shimmering world of Homeric myth to the gritty reality of a functioning state. It gave a voice and a paperwork trail to the heroes of legend, showing that behind the tales of bronze-clad warriors was a civilization run by accountants and scribes. The Code of Linear B, once cracked, illuminated not grand battles, but the mundane, essential machinery that made a Bronze Age kingdom work, proving that sometimes the most profound history is written in ledgers. This glimpse into ancient administration gives way to a discovery that reveals the very blueprint of the first city. Linear B revealed the meticulous ledgers of a Bronze Age palace, but an entire civilization thrived with a sophistication that left no such obvious rulers at all. In the 1920s, archaeologists working along the vast floodplains of the Indus River in modern-day Pakistan and India began to uncover something that would redraw the map of ancient complexity. They unearthed the remains of two great cities, and Harappa, dating from around 2500 to 1900 before Common Era. These were not organic, haphazard settlements that grew over time. They were masterpieces of deliberate design, conceived and built from the ground up with a foresight that feels almost modern. Their streets were laid out in a precise grid pattern, intersecting at perfect right angles, with entire neighborhoods dedicated to crafts like bead-making or pottery. The engineering was breathtaking. Houses were connected to a citywide sewer system with covered drains, and many homes had their own bathing areas and wells, providing a level of public hygiene unmatched in the ancient world for centuries. They used standardized, kiln-fired bricks in a consistent ratio, a sign of centralized planning and remarkable quality control. Yet, for all this evidence of a highly organized society, archaeologists made a startling observation. There were no colossal temples reaching for the sky, no grand royal palaces perched on hills, no towering statues of kings proclaiming their power. Where were the rulers? This absence is one of the Indus Valley's most compelling mysteries. It suggests a social structure that may have been more collective, perhaps governed by councils of elders, merchant guilds, or religious leaders whose authority did not require monumental self-glorification. They left behind an intricate script, etched on seals and tablets, that to this day remains undeciphered, holding their secrets silent. We know they traded widely, with Indus seals found in Mesopotamia, and they created exquisite crafts, from delicate stone weights to beautiful figurines. Their civilization, which spanned over 1 million square kilometers, was a third independent cradle of urban life, flourishing simultaneously with Egypt and Mesopotamia, but following its own unique blueprint. Its eventual decline is a puzzle, possibly linked to shifts in river courses or changes in climate patterns. The discovery of the Indus Valley cities forces a profound rethink. It proves that the leap to civilization was not a single invention that spread from one source, but a flowering of human ingenuity that could happen in multiple places, in multiple ways. It challenges the very template of early states, showing that monumental egos were not a prerequisite for monumental achievement. From these planned, egalitarian-seeming streets, we are pulled toward a discovery that represents the absolute opposite, a tomb prepared for one individual on a scale of that defies belief. The Indus Valley cities were a testament to collective planning, but a single tomb in Egypt became the ultimate monument to one individual's divine status. In November 1922, after years of fruitless digging, British archaeologist Carter peered through a small hole into a chamber in the Valley of the Kings. His patron, Lord, asked anxiously if he could see anything. Carter's now legendary reply was, "Yes, wonderful things." That understatement unveiled the greatest archaeological discovery of the 20th century, the nearly intact tomb of the boy king. While was a minor pharaoh who ruled for only about 10 years in the 14th century before Common Era, his burial chamber was a time capsule of staggering opulence and preservation, untouched by the grave robbers who had emptied every other royal tomb in the valley. The world was captivated by the photographs of the antechamber, filled to the ceiling with gilded chariots, ornate beds, alabaster vessels, and statues of guardian deities. But the heart of the discovery was the burial chamber itself, containing a series of golden shrines nested like Russian dolls, and within them, the stone sarcophagus holding the king's mummified form, his face covered by the now iconic solid gold funerary mask, an image of serene, eternal youth. This was not just treasure for treasure's sake. Every object, from the grandest throne to the simplest pair of sandals, was placed with a sacred purpose, to equip the king for his journey through the underworld and into the afterlife. The tomb provided a complete, contextual snapshot of New Kingdom royal funerary practice that fragmentary finds from looted tombs could only hint at. Egyptologists could finally see the full sequence, the rituals, the spells, the provisions, all in their original, intended places. It revealed the astonishing artistry and technological skill of Egyptian craftspeople, working in gold, faience, ivory, and wood. The discovery ignited a global wave of that influenced art, fashion, and architecture for decades, shaping how the modern world imagined ancient splendor. Tomb serves as a bittersweet capsule, a breathtaking glimpse of the artistic and spiritual peak of a civilization, while also a haunting reminder of the incalculable cultural wealth lost from the plundered tombs of greater pharaohs like the Great. It showed that sometimes, history is preserved not in the grandest monuments, but in the overlooked corners, waiting to tell a complete story. From this golden treasury prepared for a king's afterlife, we find a discovery of a different kind of preparation, one that used humble clay to calculate the cycles of the heavens themselves. A golden mask preserved a king's face for eternity, but a simple slab of damp clay preserved a revolution in human thought. In the early 20th century, archaeologist and scholar Edgar Banks sold a small, unassuming tablet to American publisher George. It was catalogued as Item 322 in his collection, a name that would become famous in the history of science. This tablet, known as 322, was created in ancient Babylon around 1800 before Common Era. To the untrained eye, it is just a grid of neat, cuneiform numbers, but to a mathematician, it is a thunderclap. The tablet lists 15 rows of numbers, and each row forms what we call a Pythagorean triple, three whole numbers that perfectly describe the sides of a right triangle. For example, one row gives us the numbers 119, 120, and 169. If you square the first two and add them together, you get exactly the square of the third. This is the precise relationship described over a millennium later by the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. The Babylonians were not just playing with numbers, they had discovered, and were applying a profound geometric principle 1,000 years before the man whose name it bears was even born. This was not a lucky guess. The sophistication of the selections and the systematic way they are ordered on the tablet show a deep, abstract understanding of number theory. Historians believe it was likely a teacher's aid, or a reference for solving practical problems in land surveying, construction, or astronomy, turning theoretical knowledge into a tool for shaping their world. The implications are staggering. It forces a complete rewrite of the intellectual timeline. We are taught that the cradle of geometry and rigorous proof lies in ancient Greece. 322 proves the foundation was laid much earlier in the mud brick cities of Mesopotamia. It is a humbling reminder that knowledge is not born in a vacuum, but is often a slow accumulation of insight passed across cultures and centuries, with credit going to the last person in the chain, not the first. This clay tablet challenges our very notion of invention, showing that some of humanity's ideas are not the product of a single genius, but the inheritance of an entire civilization, written in numbers on a palm-sized piece of earth. From this abstract calculation on clay, we move to a monumental calculation in stone, one designed not to solve equations, but to shape the very perception of history itself. The Babylonian tablet proved knowledge could be hidden in plain sight, but a message carved into a mountainside was meant to be seen from miles away. High on a sheer limestone cliff along an ancient caravan route in western Iran, a king left his story in stone. This is the inscription, a colossal billboard of power commissioned by the Persian king, the Great, around 520 before Common Era. The scale is breathtaking. The reliefs and text are carved over 300 feet above the ground, depicting standing triumphantly over defeated rebels, with the far-seeing god hovering above. The king's narrative, detailing how he quelled numerous uprisings to secure his throne, was written 3 times, in 3 different cuneiform scripts, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. For this was pure propaganda, a permanent, unmissable declaration of his authority meant to awe travelers and warn potential challengers. For modern scholars, it became something far greater, the master key to a lost library. By the 19th century, cuneiform was a complete mystery, a forest of wedge-shaped marks covering countless tablets across the Middle East with no way in. The inscription's 3 parallel versions presented the same tantalizing opportunity as the stone. The man who seized it was a British Army officer named Henry, a figure of almost mythical daring. With little more than ropes and ladders, and often working alone, he scaled the perilous cliff face over several years to meticulously make paper casts or squeezes of the immense text. It was a feat of both physical courage and intellectual dedication. Back on solid ground, and other linguists began the painstaking work of comparison. They started with the Old Persian column, the shortest of the 3, using known royal names and titles from later Persian history as their starting point. Once they cracked that script, they used it as a translation guide to unlock the Elamite and, most importantly, the Babylonian columns. This was the final breakthrough. Babylonian was a form of Akkadian, the lingua franca of ancient Mesopotamia. With the code broken, the silent archives of the region suddenly began to speak. The inscription did not just give us the history of, it gave us the tools to read the epic of Gilgamesh, the law code of Hammurabi, the boastful annals of Assyrian kings, and the meticulous business records of Sumerian merchants. It unlocked not one civilization, but the entire Mesopotamian world, from its dawn to its twilight. There is a profound irony in this. A Persian king's monumental boast, intended to celebrate his own dominance, became the very instrument that allowed us to recover the rich histories of the empires he had conquered. His act of self-glorification, carved in a place meant to be eternal, ultimately preserved the voices of his rivals for posterity. This grand display of imperial power gives way to a discovery that was not about kings or conquest, but about the quiet, foundational act of putting down roots in a new world. Carved his story into a mountain to be seen for generations, but the most profound human stories are often written in the soft, forgotten soil. For much of the 20th century, the story of the first Americans seemed settled. The dominant theory, known as Clovis First, presented a clear and dramatic timeline. It held that near the end of the last ice age, around 13,000 years ago, a corridor opened between the massive ice sheets covering North America. Across a land bridge from Siberia, bands of big-game hunters followed herds of mammoth and bison into a new, empty continent. Their distinctive fluted stone spear points, found from coast to coast, were the signature of these pioneers. This narrative was elegant, it was taught in textbooks, and it was wrong. The discovery that shattered it was not a flashy cache of weapons, but something far more humble, a damp, peat bog campsite at the very bottom of the world, in southern Chile. This site is called Monte Verde. Archaeologist Tom began excavating there in the late 1970s, and his work was an exercise in meticulous, almost forensic, patience. The waterlogged conditions had created a time capsule, preserving materials that normally vanish in an instant. Here, and his team did not just find stone tools, they found the fabric of daily life. They uncovered wooden tent frames and stakes still lashed together with cord made from local reeds. They found hearths with burned remains, scraps of animal hide, and even chewed wads of medicinal seaweed from the distant Pacific coast. This was not a temporary hunting stop. It was a well-established settlement, a place where people lived, worked, and healed. Then came the radiocarbon dates, which were nothing short of revolutionary. The main occupation layer at Monte Verde was reliably dated to at least 14,500 years ago. That was a full 1,500 years before the Clovis culture supposedly began. Later, deeper evidence hinted at human presence as far back as 18,500 years. The implications were earth-shaking. If people were living in southern Chile 14,500 years ago, they had to have begun their journey across the continents much, much earlier. The ice-free corridor through the interior of North America would not have been open yet. This forced archaeologists to consider a radical new pathway, a coastal route. Imagine small groups moving in boats, skirting the edge of the Pacific from Northeast Asia down along the coastlines of Alaska and the Americas, living off the rich marine resources. This maritime hypothesis explained how people could have traveled so far, so quickly, bypassing the glacial barriers. Monte Verde did more than just push back a date, it broke a scholarly paradigm. It gave other, once dismissed pre-Clovis sites credibility and opened the floodgates for new discoveries across the continents. It speaks to an astonishing human capacity, not just for endurance, but for incredible adaptability. These first explorers were not just following mammoths, they were reading new landscapes, from frigid coasts to temperate forests, mastering different resources with stunning speed. Their story is one of resilience and exploration written not in grand monuments, but in preserved wood, knotted cord, and chewed seaweed, a quiet campsite that shouted down a decades-old theory and rewrote the opening chapter of an entire hemisphere. From this quiet bog that rewrote a migration, we are drawn to the silent depths of the Mediterranean, where a sunken ship preserved not a way of life, but a library of ancient thought. The quiet campsite of Monte Verde rewrote a journey of thousands of miles, but a shipwreck in the Aegean Sea preserved a journey of the mind. Working off the Greek island of in 1901 found a Roman-era shipwreck. Its cargo held a jumbled treasure of statues and artifacts. Among the corroded bronze fragments brought to the surface was a lump about the size of a shoebox, caked in centuries of marine limestone. For decades, it sat in a museum drawer, an unidentifiable curiosity. Then, researchers began to look closer, and the world changed. X-ray and later advanced CT scanning finally revealed the truth hidden inside that calcified shell. It was not a statue, but a machine, an intricate clockwork assembly of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut and mounted within a wooden frame. Inscriptions on its faces served as a user's manual. This was the mechanism, and it dates to the 2nd century before Common Era. It was, in essence, an ancient analog computer. By turning a hand crank on the side, an operator could dial forward or backward in time, and a series of dials on the front and back would move in perfect synchronization to display astonishing information. One dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympics. Others showed the phases of the moon and predicted lunar and solar eclipses. Most remarkably, it modeled the irregular motions of the 5 known planets against the background of the zodiac, accounting for their retrograde loops, a problem of celestial mechanics so complex it would not be fully solved mathematically for another 1,500 years. The mechanism is a physical fusion of deep knowledge. It applied precise Babylonian astronomical data, centuries of observations, to the brilliant mechanical engineering of the Greek world. To build such a device required not only master craftsmanship in metalworking, but a theoretical understanding of the cosmos as a predictable mechanical system. Its very existence shatters the image of ancient technology as solely about levers, pulleys, and simple machines. It speaks of a lineage of high scientific instrument-making that was hinted at in historical texts, but never before seen. The loss of this technological tradition, perhaps during the upheavals of the Roman era, represents a forgotten branch of human ingenuity. The mechanism is a ghost, a single surviving whisper of a conversation between philosophy, mathematics, and engineering that we thought belonged to a much later age. It is a haunting lesson in the fragility of knowledge, proving that entire worlds of intellectual achievement can vanish, only to be resurrected by a single, miraculous find. This Greek marvel of calculation gives way to a different kind of center, one not of gears and cycles, but of commerce and scholarship that flourished under the Saharan sun. The mechanism was a ghost of Greek genius, but massive stone walls in southern Africa stood as an undeniable, monumental fact. When European explorers and treasure hunters first came upon the ruins of Great Zimbabwe in the late 19th century, the scale and sophistication of the stonework left them bewildered. Vast, curving walls stood over 30 feet high, constructed from precisely cut granite blocks fitted together without any mortar. An elegant conical tower rose within a grand enclosure. The dominant colonial mindset of the era could not, or would not, accept the evidence before their eyes. They concocted fanciful theories, attributing the city to foreign builders like the Phoenicians, or even linking it to the biblical Queen of Sheba. The idea that an indigenous African civilization could have created such a masterpiece was, to them, unthinkable. This refusal to see was a profound act of historical erasure. It took systematic archaeological work in the 20th century to dismantle these racist myths and restore the truth. The research was clear. Great Zimbabwe was the heart of a powerful Shona kingdom that flourished between the 11th and 15th centuries, centuries before European colonization reached the interior. Its wealth and influence were built on a vast network of trade. The kingdom sat atop rich goldfields, and this precious metal flowed east to ports on the Swahili coast, connecting it to a vibrant Indian Ocean trade network that reached as far as Arabia, India, and China. In return, luxury goods like Chinese porcelain and Persian glass beads made their way back to this inland capital. The city itself, home to perhaps 18,000 people at its peak, was a marvel of social organization. The complex layout reveals a clear hierarchy, with a hilltop enclosure for the ruler and spiritual leaders, a valley enclosure for the elite, and surrounding areas for the broader population. The iconic Great Enclosure, with its massive outer wall and mysterious solid conical tower, likely served as a royal residence and a site for sacred ceremonies. The very design of the walls, with their chevron and herringbone patterns, was not just decorative, but a display of power and skilled craftsmanship. The discovery and proper interpretation of Great Zimbabwe was a watershed moment. It was pivotal in decolonizing African history, providing irrefutable stone and mortar proof that complex, autonomous civilizations with sophisticated political systems, international economies, and advanced architecture developed independently in sub-Saharan Africa. It forced a dramatic rewriting of textbooks that had long marginalized or ignored the continent's rich pre-colonial past. The site stands not as a ruin of a lost people, but as a testament to African innovation and resilience, a crucial corrective that reminds us civilization has never had a single address. This African center of power, built from enduring stone, leads us to a much older gallery of power, where the first artists painted their world not with bricks, but with pigments on a cave wall. Great Zimbabwe's stone walls were a declaration of power etched into the landscape, but a much earlier declaration was made in absolute darkness, with pigment on stone. In September 1940, 4 teenage boys and their dog Robot were exploring the wooded hills near France when a fallen pine tree revealed a hidden cavity in the earth. Venturing inside with a makeshift lamp, they illuminated a site that had been sealed away for walls and ceilings alive with a stampede of ancient beasts. This was Lascaux Cave, a prehistoric art gallery of staggering beauty and scale, its paintings created around 17,000 years ago. The artists worked by the flickering light of tallow lamps, using natural mineral pigments, red and yellow black manganese dioxide, to depict herds of aurochs, wild horses, stags, and bison with a vitality that feels immediate, even electric. These are not crude stick figures or simple outlines. They are masterpieces of observation. The artists captured the muscled bulk of the bison, the graceful curve of a horse's neck, the dynamic motion of animals in flight, sometimes using the natural contours of the rock wall to add three-dimensional volume to a shoulder or a haunch. This is a sophisticated use of perspective and form that reveals not just skilled hands, but deeply attentive eyes, a profound intimacy with the animal world. The arrangement of the paintings is equally deliberate, leading scholars to believe the cave was not a random canvas, but a carefully orchestrated space, perhaps for rituals, initiations, or the transmission of vital knowledge. Entering the deeper chambers like the Hall of the Bulls or the Axial Gallery would have been a profound sensory experience, a journey from the world above into a sacred, painted underworld where the spirits of the animals seemed to breathe on the stone. The discovery of Lascaux utterly transformed the popular image of our Paleolithic ancestors. The abstract concept of the caveman, once synonymous with grunting primitiveness, was replaced by the reality of the cave artist, a thoughtful, creative being capable of symbolic communication and profound aesthetic expression. This was a cognitive revolution rendered in color. It proved that long before writing, before agriculture, before permanent settlements, humans possessed a rich interior life and an irresistible urge to represent their world, to make meaning visible. Lascaux is a Sistine Chapel of the Ice Age, a testament that the drive to create beauty and narrative is woven into the very fabric of our species. This explosion of ancient artistry, this vivid proof of the human spirit's early bloom, sets the stage for a final discovery of a different magnitude, one that traded the intimacy of the cave for the grandeur of an emperor's ambition, not painted on a wall, but standing in silent, regimented thousands. The painted walls of Lascaux captured a fleeting world of living animals, but an emperor sought to capture an entire army for eternity. In March 1974, farmers digging a well outside the city of N, China, struck not water, but something far more astonishing, the fragmented head of a life-sized clay soldier. This accidental discovery led to the unearthing of one of the most breathtaking archaeological sites on Earth, the army of China's first emperor Qin. This was not a tomb in the traditional sense, but a sprawling subterranean city of the dead, designed to mirror the emperor's power in life. Excavation revealed 3 vast pits containing an estimated 8,000 soldiers, each one unique, with individualized facial features, hairstyles, and armor corresponding to their rank, from lowly infantry to high-ranking officers. Alongside them stood horses and intricate bronze chariots, a complete military formation frozen in time, ready for battle. The scale of the project is a testament to the absolute power of the Qin dynasty, which first unified China's warring states in 221 before Common Era. The logistical feat is staggering. Each statue was created using an assembly line process, with mass-produced bodies but hand-sculpted heads and details, requiring the coordinated labor of hundreds of thousands of artisans and laborers over decades. Originally, every figure was painted in vibrant, lifelike colors, a detail that makes their silent gray presence today even more haunting. The army's sole purpose, as historians understand, was one of spiritual protection, to guard the emperor in the afterlife and allow him to rule beyond the grave, a direct reflection of his lifelong obsession with immortality. This silent legion transforms an abstract historical figure into a tangible force of will, a ruler who could command not just a nation, but the very composition of the underworld. Yet, the greatest mystery remains untouched. The warriors are merely the outer guardians of the complex. The emperor's own burial mound, a vast, pyramid-shaped hill of earth, lies undisturbed at the site's heart. Ancient texts describe it as a microcosm of his empire, with ceilings inlaid with pearls to represent the stars and rivers of flowing mercury. Modern scientific surveys have indeed detected unusually high concentrations of mercury in the soil there, lending eerie credence to these ancient accounts. The decision to leave the central tomb is one of profound respect and caution, a recognition that some secrets are preserved not just by Earth, but by time itself. The army, therefore, is a monument in two parts: the revealed army that reshaped our understanding of early Chinese art, military science, and bureaucratic control, and the hidden tomb that continues to hold its ultimate secret. It stands as the final, breathtaking proof that the human drive to leave a mark, to defy oblivion, can shape clay, bronze, and history itself into a statement meant to last forever. 8,000 clay soldiers stand in silent testimony to one emperor's dream of eternity, but when we step back from these 20 discoveries, a far grander human story comes into focus. This is not a single line of progress, a straight path from cave to city that began in one special place. That old narrative is shattered. What we see instead is a global tapestry, woven from countless parallel experiments in what it means to build a society. In the hills of Turkey, people gathered to raise monumental pillars before they ever planted a field. Along the Indus River, engineers laid out perfect grid cities without leaving behind a single king's palace. In Mesopotamia, a ruler carved laws into stone to bring order to his realm, while in the Andes, an entire civilization shaped mountains into celestial calendars. These are not sequential chapters in one book. They are different books entirely, written in different languages of stone and clay, each telling its own story of human complexity. Beneath this stunning diversity, however, run powerful, unifying threads. We are a species that cannot help but make meaning. We see it in the careful curves of the Venus of, an abstract symbol of life carved 25,000 years ago. We hear it in the epic grief of Gilgamesh, the first story ever written down, grappling with love and loss. We witness it in the meticulous gears of the mechanism, a desperate and beautiful attempt to calculate the dance of the planets. Our drive to organize is equally profound, from Hammurabi's detailed legal code to the unseen administrators of the Indus Valley, proving that social order can take many forms, from the autocratic to the collective. Perhaps the most vital thread this tapestry reveals is our deep interconnectedness. Great Zimbabwe's walls were built with wealth from gold traded across the Indian Ocean. The first people to reach the Americas, as shown at Monte Verde, were masters of adaptation, reading new landscapes with incredible speed. And our very bodies carry the proof of ancient meetings, with Denisovan DNA still helping people breathe easily in the high Himalayas. We have never been isolated. For ideas, goods, genes, and stories have flowed across continents and seas, each contact sparking new innovation. This revised narrative is ultimately one of resilience. It shows a species that time and again has faced immense challenges, shifting climates, vast migrations, the rise and fall of empires, and responded not with a single solution, but with a dazzling array of them. It challenges any simplistic model that places one culture or one continent at the center of history's stage. The true story of human civilization is a symphony played on every continent, a chorus of different voices, each contributing its own unique melody to a song of survival, creativity, and endless curiosity about the world and our place within it. That silent army stands as a powerful final piece in a vast, unfolding mosaic. From the silent temples of to the silent legions of Qin, these 20 discoveries are more than isolated wonders. They are fundamental revisions to the story of human civilization. Each one arrived like a key turning in a long-locked door, pushing back timelines, introducing us to forgotten ancestors like the Denisovans, deciphering voices silenced for, and revealing bursts of genius, from Babylonian mathematics to Greek analog computers that we never knew existed. They prove that our past is not a settled record gathering dust, but a living, breathing narrative that is constantly being edited by the ground beneath our feet. Think of each discovery as a single puzzle piece, weathered and incomplete on its own. For years, we tried to force these pieces into a simple, linear picture. But as more are found and carefully fitted together, the true image emerges, and it is far richer, more complex, and more wonderfully human than we ever imagined. These artifacts are not just relics behind glass, they are active conversations with our ancestors. They challenge our most basic assumptions about what drives society, where creativity begins, and even who we are as a species. They expand our sense of identity, showing us that we are the heirs not to one single thread of history, but to a magnificent, global tapestry of innovation and resilience. And this story is far from over. The next great discovery is waiting, perhaps in a melting glacier revealing another frozen moment, under the sands hiding a lost city's foundations, or within a dusty archive where a forgotten script holds its secrets. It is ready to rewrite another chapter, to surprise us once again. If this journey through the milestones that reshaped our understanding has captivated you, consider subscribing to join us as we continue to uncover more of history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear your perspective. What single discovery do you think has had the most profound impact on how we see our shared human journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below and never stop